It was just another ordinary night when Emma Collins, a 26-year-old graphic designer from Portland, Oregon, sat curled up on her couch, aimlessly scrolling through TikTok. Her roommate had just gone to bed. The rain tapped softly against the window, and Emma had no intention of doing anything but decompressing from a long day. Then she froze. The video itself was unremarkable, just a street musician playing violin in a bustling plaza somewhere in Europe. It had gone viral, not for the music, but for the chaotic moment when a bird swooped down and stole a woman's sandwich in the background. People in the comments joked about it, memed it, and shared it everywhere. But Emma didn't laugh, because in the 2-second stretch before the sandwich incident, a man walked behind the musician, tall, gaunt, and slow-moving. His face was turned just slightly, his expression blank, almost lifeless. Emma's heart dropped. She replayed the video, then again, because the man in the background looked exactly like her brother, Noah. Noah Collins vanished 9 years earlier, in the summer of 2014, at the age of 20. One minute he was texting Emma memes and picking up iced coffee for their mom. The next, gone. No notes, no signs of struggle, no transactions. Just an empty car left in a parking lot near the Columbia River Gorge, and a whole family left behind in grief, confusion, and agony. But here, now, there he was. Same high cheekbones, same crooked nose from the time he fell off his skateboard in 6th grade. Same piercing blue eyes, though in the video they seemed distant. His dark hair was longer, threaded with premature gray. He looked older, much older than he should. Emma's hands trembled as she scrubbed through the frames. Could it really be him? She hadn't seen his face in nearly a decade, except in fading photos and recurring dreams. For years, her family had lived in the shadow of his absence, caught between hope and heartbreak. Now, a 12-second TikTok video, filmed halfway across the world, was threatening to shatter everything they thought they knew. What was he doing in that video? Why did he look so lost? And most importantly, was Noah still alive? Noah Collins was the kind of person who left a mark on you, quietly, without trying. He wasn't loud or attention-seeking or the life of the party, but once you met him, you remembered him. He was gentle, observant, the kind of guy who noticed when someone at the table hadn't spoken in a while and would softly bring them back into the conversation. He made people feel seen. That summer, 2014, he had just finished his 2nd year at Oregon State University, majoring in environmental science. He came home to Portland in early June, just before his 21st birthday. The plan was to work part-time at a local outdoor gear store, save some money, and take a hiking trip with Emma before heading back to school in the fall. By all accounts, Noah was in a good place. No signs of depression, no fights with family. He was texting friends, making Spotify playlists, and binging documentaries with Emma until 2 a.m. That's what made what happened next so baffling. It was July 2nd, a Wednesday, warm, clear skies. Noah had the day off and told his mom he was heading out to the gorge for a solo hike, something he did often. He said he'd be back before dinner. He never came home. By 8 p.m., when the sun started dipping behind the trees and his phone went straight to voicemail, their mother, Dana, started to worry. Emma was still at work, but when she came home and saw the tightness in her mom's face, she knew something wasn't right. They called Noah's friends. No one had heard from him since earlier that morning. At 10 p.m., Dana called the police. "Missing adults need 24 hours, the officer said. "He's probably just off the grid for a bit." But Emma knew her brother. Noah was careful, predictable. If he was going hiking, he left notes. He texted photos of trail signs. He used an app to track his location. This time, nothing. By the next morning, panic had set in. A family friend who worked with search and rescue helped get a unit mobilized. They found Noah's car in the trailhead parking lot at Dog Mountain, a popular hiking spot. It was locked. Nothing inside appeared disturbed. His hiking boots were missing from the trunk, along with a small pack, a water bottle, and a granola bar. For a day, it seemed like he might have just gotten lost. A wrong turn, a fall, a delay. But the search stretched into days, then a week. Helicopters circled. Drones scanned the ridges. Volunteers combed the trails, calling his name over and over until the sound of it felt surreal. Nothing, no trace, no footprints, no discarded gear, no signal pings. It was like he had vanished into thin air. Emma later described the moment she realized he wasn't coming back, not that day, not that week, as the slowest kind of heartbreak, like drowning in dry air. The media picked up the story. "College student disappears on solo hike," one headline read. Noah's face, his calm, soft-eyed face, was everywhere. Social media was flooded with hashtags, #Find Noah, #Bring Noah Home. Family and friends held candlelight vigils. Strangers mailed tips and prayers. But weeks passed, then months, and the trail grew cold. By September, the search had officially ended. Noah was now categorized as a missing adult. The police were no longer actively pursuing leads. His room remained untouched. His toothbrush was still in the bathroom cup. His old sneakers waited by the door. And Emma, just 17 at the time, felt like she'd lost her brother and the entire foundation of her world in one single moment. The days after his disappearance were filled with surreal silence. There were no screams, no drama, just the ache of absence, a family frozen in time. Holidays were hollow. Birthdays felt like crimes. Every knock at the door made hearts race. Every unknown caller ID brought a whisper of hope. But Noah never called, and he never came home. In the weeks that followed Noah's disappearance, every waking moment in the Collins household revolved around two words. What if? What if he slipped and fell into a ravine no one searched? What if someone picked him up on the road and something went wrong? What if he wanted to disappear? But the last question, that was the one no one said out loud. Not at first. Emma refused to believe that. Not her brother. He wasn't the type to run. He didn't hide from responsibility, and he wasn't secretive. When she asked him for help, he never brushed her off. When their dad left, he was the one who quietly stepped in, making her tea when she cried at night, walking her to school the next morning. He was her anchor, and yet the silence stretched on. Dana, their mother, began obsessively watching the local news, as if Noah's face might suddenly reappear in the ticker. She couldn't bring herself to change anything about the house. His favorite mug still sat in the dishwasher rack. His worn hoodie hung on the back of the dining chair. Every time she passed it, she ran her hand over the sleeve. They created a makeshift command center in the dining room. Maps, timelines, phone logs, emails, notebooks. Flyers were printed by the thousands. Emma would walk neighborhoods at night, taping them to every post, pole, and storefront she passed. She stopped going to school for a while. Her world had narrowed to the space Noah used to occupy. One afternoon, about a month after he vanished, she took his old iPod out of his drawer and pressed play. A song started. Bon Iver's Holocene, a song he'd once played for her, saying, "It makes me feel like standing still in the middle of nowhere." She listened to it on repeat, standing still, in the middle of nowhere. Exactly how it felt. Detectives assigned to the case did what they could, interviewed hikers, canvassed nearby towns, checked rest stops. One man said he thought he'd seen Noah the day he disappeared, sitting on a rock off-trail, staring into the forest. But his statement was vague. No timestamp, no photo, just a hunch. And even that lead went nowhere. Then came the theories. An online thread suggested Noah had planned his own disappearance. Smart kid, loner, liked nature. Maybe he wanted to drop out and live off the grid, one commenter wrote. Others believed he'd been abducted, pointing to a string of disappearances near hiking areas in the Pacific Northwest. Emma read every post, every comment. Sometimes she'd argue, other times she just cried. But the cruelest part wasn't the theories. It was the slow fade. People stopped asking. Friends grew distant. The calls came less frequently. The neighborhood vigils thinned. It was as if the world had decided to move on from Noah. But Emma couldn't. Neither could Dana. In the years that followed, life limped forward. Emma graduated high school, then community college. She never left Portland. She couldn't bring herself to. Her mother developed insomnia, waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. and just sitting by the window watching the driveway, waiting. A small wooden box sat on the mantel, filled with things that once belonged to Noah, his favorite mixtape CD, a ticket stub from a concert they'd gone to together, a note he'd written Emma after a rough breakup. "You're made of tougher stuff than the world gives you credit for," it read. She memorized it. They kept his room exactly as it was, the sheets neatly made, books stacked on the bedside table, a half-finished sketch he had drawn still taped to the wall. Every year on his birthday, Dana lit a candle. Emma would buy a cupcake and leave it in his room. It was their way of not giving up, of telling him, wherever he was, that they hadn't forgotten, that they never would. The police had long since closed the file. The trail had gone cold. Officially, Noah Collins was a missing person, presumed deceased. But for Emma, he remained suspended in time, alive, somewhere, just out of reach. She often said, "I never saw a body. I never got to say goodbye. Until I do, I'll never believe he's gone." And then, nearly 9 years later, she saw that video, a viral TikTok, a violinist playing in a crowded plaza in Prague, and in the background, walking behind the camera, limping, disoriented, aged far beyond his 29 years, a man who looked exactly like Noah. Emma paused the frame, zoomed in, her heart racing, her breath caught somewhere in her throat. The shape of his jaw, the way his left shoulder drooped just slightly, the lopsided walk, everything screamed familiarity. Could it be? If it was, where had he been all these years? Why was he in a foreign country? And why did he look like he'd been through something no one could begin to understand? By the end of 2014, Noah's disappearance had become one of many unsolved cases tucked quietly into Oregon's missing persons database. The media moved on, the reporters stopped calling, and the file labeled Collins Noah A. was pushed into the back of a filing cabinet in the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department. But for Emma and Dana, time had split in two, before Noah disappeared and after. Emma took on the role no teenager should have to carry. She became her brother's unofficial investigator. While her friends were applying to colleges, she was digging through public records, scanning CCTV footage sent from a gas station 3 counties away, analyzing timestamps, geolocation data, trail maps, anything. She had no training in investigation, just desperation and Google. Every so often, a lead would surface, like the man spotted in a Montana diner 6 months after Noah vanished. The waitress swore he seemed disoriented, carried a dirty hiking pack, and didn't speak. He paid in crumpled bills and left quickly. When shown a photo of Noah, she hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Could be," she said. But by the time authorities arrived, he was gone. Or the trail camera footage from Washington State in 2017, just a blur of a figure moving through the forest. A hunter claimed the man had sunken eyes and moved like he hadn't seen people in years. The resemblance was never confirmed. Again, the lead vanished into nothing. The family even hired a private investigator, Jared Holtz, a former FBI agent known for tracking down missing persons. He worked the case for 6 months, combing through old interviews, forensically mapping out the day of the disappearance. But he hit a wall. No confirmed sightings, no bank activity, no digital footprint. He filed his report with a somber summary. "If he's alive, he's off-grid, either by choice or by force," the phrase haunted Emma. By force. Had someone taken him? Was he being held? Was he even still himself? Over the years, wild theories emerged online. Some claimed Noah joined a cult. One post claimed he'd been seen at a remote survivalist commune near the Cascades. Another claimed he was a victim of human trafficking. A Reddit thread suggested a serial predator was operating in national parks, and Noah had been one of many. Emma kept a private document with every theory, every name, every anonymous email tip. At last count, there were over 160 entries. She didn't tell her mom about most of them. Dana had started to decline around 2018. The long-term stress took its toll. High blood pressure, anxiety attacks, and long silences that grew deeper each year. But Emma stayed vigilant. One particularly cruel moment came in 2020, during the early days of the pandemic. A man was found wandering in California without ID. He was hospitalized for dehydration and extreme confusion. Someone on Twitter posted his photo, suggesting he resembled Noah Collins. It went viral. Emma's inbox exploded. But it wasn't Noah, just another man lost in his own life. "I cried harder that night than I had in years," Emma later said in an interview, "because I realized how badly I needed it to be him." Still, she pressed on. She created a digital timeline, started a blog, updated Noah's missing persons posters with age-progressed images generated by AI. She joined missing persons forums and cold case Zoom meetups. The username Echo4Noah became known in online sleuthing communities. If there was even a glimmer of hope, she chased it. But hope comes at a price. Each lead was a tiny war between belief and reality, between faith and exhaustion. By 2023, Emma had come to live with the ambiguity. Not peace, exactly, but coexistence. She had a job, a quiet life, a circle of friends who understood not to ask too many questions. Her mother had moved in with her, no longer able to live alone. They still celebrated his birthday, they still lit that candle. But the world had grown quiet around his name, until the video. The TikTok video arrived like a lightning bolt in the stillness. It had been posted by a European travel vlogger named Luka Petrovich, known for short cinematic clips of street life across Eastern Europe. The video itself was nothing special, just another charming day-in-the-life piece featuring a violinist performing near a fountain in Prague. No narration, just music, ambiance, and everyday moments. Until it wasn't. Emma had only seen it because a friend sent it as a joke. "Watch till the end," they texted, referencing the seagull stealing a sandwich. But Emma never made it that far. Her entire world paused at the 007 mark. The man in the background wasn't just similar to Noah. He moved like him. He carried his shoulders the same way. His fingers curled just like Noah's used to when he walked in deep thought. And the eyes, even through the pixelation, they held that same distant sadness she remembered so well. But more than that, he looked tired, hollow, like time had carved through him unevenly. She dropped her phone, then picked it up, replayed, paused, zoomed in, screenshotted, zoomed again. She didn't sleep that night. Her hands shook as she wrote to Luka, the content creator, pleading for the original footage. She didn't expect a reply. But the next morning he answered. At first he was skeptical, but when Emma told him who she was and shared links to the case, his tone changed. "I remember him," Luka typed. "He walked behind me just as I was finishing the shoot. He looked wrong, like a ghost. He didn't respond when I smiled at him. He stared ahead, didn't blink. I thought he might have been homeless, or on something. Emma's breath caught. Luca sent the original file. Higher resolution, clearer detail. And there he was. Noah. Or someone who looked exactly like him. She called her mom into the room. Dana took one look at the screen and collapsed into the chair behind her. "I thought I'd never see his face again," she whispered. Emma sent the footage to the Portland police, attaching a full report, side-by-side photos, and a request to reopen the case. She expected delays, maybe even dismissal, but something about the timing, or perhaps the clarity of the footage, struck a chord. They reopened the file. Interpol was contacted, and for the first time in nearly a decade, an official investigation was underway again. The footage was authenticated. Forensic analysts conducted gait analysis, comparing the man's posture, stride, shoulder position, and facial structure with known images of Noah. The preliminary report, high probability of match. Emma's heart ached with a strange, terrible hope. Detectives traced the location, an open plaza near the Charles Bridge in Prague. They requested security footage from nearby cafes, traffic cams, anything that might capture more of the man's movement after he walked out of frame. But there was nothing. Noah, if it was him, had disappeared again. Emma packed a suitcase within hours. She was going to Prague. In the following days, the story began to spread again. Local news picked it up first. Sister believes missing brother seen in viral video. Then national outlets. Reddit threads revived. TikTok users began scouring backgrounds of every travel video shot in Prague. Thousands joined the search. Theories exploded online. Had Noah been kidnapped and held all these years? Was he suffering from amnesia? Was he hiding from something? Or someone? Some claimed it was a look-alike. Others said Emma was desperate, seeing what she wanted to see. But the ones who knew her, who had followed the case for years, believed, because they saw it too. A GoFundMe helped cover travel costs. Within 4 days, Emma and Dana were on a plane to the Czech Republic. What followed was a week of confusion, leads, and crushing near misses. They walked the streets from the video, printed flyers, talked to vendors and musicians. One woman claimed she'd seen the man at a shelter months earlier. Another said he sometimes sat under the bridge near the Vltava River, just staring at the water. But no one could confirm his name, and no one had seen him recently. Police circulated the image. Local NGOs were alerted. Interpol requested fingerprints and DNA, but of course, they needed to find the man first. Emma spent hours standing in that plaza, just waiting, watching, but he never returned. One evening, she sat by the river and broke down. "What if I'm too late?" she whispered. "What if I found him, only to lose him again?" Her mother squeezed her hand, eyes glassy. "We found something. That means he's not just a memory anymore." It was true. For 9 years, Noah had been a story told in past tense. But now, suddenly, he was present, real, and somewhere out there. The tipping point came from an unlikely place. An old woman named Zuzana, who ran a second-hand bookstore 3 streets down from the plaza. She had a faded scarf wrapped around her silver-streaked hair and walked with a limp, but her eyes were sharp. She had seen the posters Emma left on the corner post and recognized the face. Immediately, "Yes," she said softly. "He comes sometimes, always after the rain." Emma's heart leapt. Susanna explained that the man came in around dusk, usually on Thursdays, sometimes Fridays. He never said much, never bought a book. He would stand in the corner by the true crime shelf, then leave, always in the same direction, always alone. "I tried to speak to him once," she said. "He looked through me." Emma returned the next day, and the next. Nothing. Then, on the 5th evening, just as the streetlights buzzed to life, he appeared. Emma was in the back, pretending to browse when she saw him through the shop's reflection. He was older, his hair thinner, his frame more fragile. He wore a coat 2 sizes too big and shoes that had been stitched at the soles. But it was him. It was Noah. Emma froze. She couldn't move. Her heart thundered in her chest so loudly she feared it might drown everything else out. She stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. "Noah?" He turned. His face didn't change. No recognition, no emotion. Just a slow blink, like someone waking from a long, impossible dream. "Noah, it's me. It's Emma." He tilted his head. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Only the sound of his breath, shallow, uneven. Emma stepped closer. "You're alive." Still nothing. But then, a flicker. His eyes, those same eyes, narrowed slightly. He stared at her face like it was a puzzle he hadn't seen in years, a memory he couldn't quite access. Then, as if something inside him sparked, he whispered, "Em?" Tears blurred her vision. "Yes, yes, Noah, it's me." But as she reached for him, he stumbled back. His hands trembled. He looked around, panicked, like a deer suddenly aware of the world again. Then he ran, out the door, into the street, disappearing into the alleys of the old city. Emma chased him, screaming his name. She lost him, but something had cracked open. He had remembered her. The next 48 hours were chaos. Prague police launched an active search. Local volunteers joined. Flyers were updated to include new photos. Emma filed a formal identification request with Interpol, submitting fingerprints, DNA swabs, and childhood medical records. They canvassed shelters, train stations, emergency rooms. Emma didn't sleep. Her phone buzzed constantly. Journalists, officials, strangers from around the world offering tips and prayers. But none of it mattered if she couldn't find him again. Then, on a rainy Monday evening, a man matching Noah's description was brought to a small psychiatric clinic just outside Prague. He had been found sleeping in the stairwell of an abandoned building, confused, mumbling to himself. He had no ID, no wallet, nothing but a faded photograph in his coat pocket, Emma's 6th-grade school portrait. The nurses called the number on the flyer. Emma arrived within the hour. He was sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, wrapped in a thermal blanket, eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window. She stepped inside, slowly, carefully. He turned. This time he didn't run. "Hey," she whispered, her voice cracking. He blinked. You're real." "Yes, Noah, I'm here." He looked down at the photo in his hand. "I kept this. I don't know why." Emma knelt beside him. "You came back." He shook his head slowly. "I don't remember leaving." What followed was a tangle of interviews, tests, and psychological evaluations. Noah's mind was a fractured mirror. He remembered Emma, their mother, their childhood. But the moment he disappeared, the trailhead, the hike, everything after that was fog. The Czech doctors diagnosed him with a dissociative fugue state likely triggered by trauma. It was a rare condition, extremely rare, where a person loses access to their identity and past, sometimes wandering far from home. In some cases, they create an entirely new identity. In Noah's case, it seemed he hadn't created anything. He had simply become a ghost. But how did he end up in Prague? Who helped him survive? Where had he been all those years? Noah had fragments. He remembered boats, a man with an accent, a basement with yellow walls, a forest, then more darkness, then years of blurred seasons, faces he couldn't place, cities he didn't recognize. Emma took notes, recorded everything. There were signs of exploitation, possibly trafficking, possibly abuse, but nothing concrete. And Noah, fragile as he was, could only handle so much at a time. Still, he was alive, and Emma was never letting go again. Noah remained in the clinic for 2 more weeks. The doctors were cautious. He was physically weak, mentally unstable, and emotionally volatile. But he was lucid, and every day Emma noticed her brother surfacing from behind his hollow gaze, about them, about Portland, about what had happened. Emma told him slowly, gently, like turn-out book in silence, tears slipping down his cheeks when he heard how their mother had waited by the window every night. He asked what year it was. When Emma told him, 2023, his entire body went rigid. "Has it really been 9 years?" he whispered. She nodded. "We never stopped looking for you." Noah cried for a long time. In the days that followed, bits of memory returned in haunting flashes. He described waking up one morning, he wasn't sure when or where, with his hands wrapped in gauze. He was in a small room, possibly underground. Someone fed him canned food through a slot in the door. The man never spoke. Later, he recalled being moved, perhaps smuggled, across borders. One memory placed him on a ferry, staring at water while others slept in hammocks. Another flash, a market square, his name being called, but in a language he didn't know. What emerged was a vague yet chilling picture. Noah had been taken. No one could confirm by whom or for what reason, but the indicators were there: coercion, confinement, psychological trauma, and complete severance from identity. Somewhere along the way, he lost himself. And then, somehow, he escaped. When or how was still a blank. All he knew was that for the past year he'd been wandering Europe under the name Nico, a name he couldn't recall choosing. Locals gave him food. He slept in shelters, alleyways, train stations. He felt watched, always. But no one had spoken to him like Emma did. No one had looked at him and said his name. Noah. The name brought him back to life. While the clinic provided care, the American consulate stepped in. Emma worked with officials to organize travel documents, medical clearance, and identity verification. DNA tests confirmed what Emma already knew. He was her brother. The story broke across international media. American missing for 9 years, found in Prague. After sister recognizes him in TikTok video. Emma was bombarded with interview requests, podcast invitations, even book deals. She declined them all. "I only care about one thing," she told reporters, "bringing my brother home." On the flight back to Portland, Emma held Noah's hand the entire time. He gazed out the window in silence, awed by the clouds. "I feel like I'm dreaming," he murmured. "You're not," she whispered. "You came back." Back home, the reunion was slow, cautious, and sacred. Dana stood at the front door when they arrived, her face pale and trembling. When Noah stepped out of the car, she reached for him with both hands, afraid to blink in case he vanished again. "My baby," she whispered. "My boy." He collapsed into her arms. That night, they sat together in the living room, surrounded by old photos, uneaten dinner, and memories that refused to fade. Dana wept openly. Noah spoke in fragmented sentences, apologizing for things that weren't his fault. Emma didn't let go of his hand once. He slept in his old room that night. Everything was as he had left it. His posters, his books, his hoodie still on the back of the chair. Emma had vacuumed the carpet the day before he vanished, and it was as if the room had waited for him too. The healing was slow. The trauma was real. But they were a family again. Within weeks, investigators reopened the file with new eyes. They conducted interviews, re-examined Noah's last known contacts, and analyzed his memories, fragmented as they were, for geographic and environmental clues. Theories were drawn up. Was Noah the victim of an international trafficking ring? Was it an isolated kidnapping? A cult? The truth remained elusive. Noah agreed to sit with FBI forensic profilers. He underwent memory recovery therapy. Some details emerged: names, sounds, fragments of a logo he'd once seen on a shipping crate. Enough to pique interest, but not yet enough to prosecute anyone. The Collins family was assigned a trauma specialist, a social worker, a legal advocate. Noah was given a new ID, a therapist, a team dedicated to helping him piece together not just what had happened to him, but who he now was. And slowly, painfully, he began to live again. Emma never left his side. She took a leave of absence from work. They went for walks in the park, watched old shows they used to love, played cards late into the night. Some days were hard, others were harder, but they had each other, and they had hope. The world Noah Collins returned to was not the one he had left. In the 9 years since his disappearance, phones had transformed, cultural references had shifted, people had come and gone. There were moments when he'd sit in a cafe with Emma, his face calm, but his eyes haunted, watching people interact with technology or laugh over trends he didn't understand. "I feel like a ghost in my own life," he admitted one day. Emma reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're not a ghost. You're here. You survived." That became a kind of mantra in their home. But survival came with scars. Noah suffered from nightmares, sleepwalking, and occasional flashbacks. Some days he would wake up disoriented, unsure whether he was in Prague or Portland, unsure if Emma was real or imagined. The trauma therapists diagnosed him with complex PTSD, compounded by years of prolonged dissociation and captivity. Yet through it all, Emma remained his compass. In time, Noah began reclaiming fragments of himself. He started writing, small journal entries at first, then full pages, processing his memories through metaphor. He drew again, too, sketching places he vaguely remembered. A room with yellow walls, a river beneath a metal bridge, a man's silhouette in a doorway. They weren't clear enough to identify locations, but they offered therapeutic release. Dana took a quieter route. She cooked his favorite meals. She folded his laundry, just like she used to when he was a teenager. She'd knock softly on his door before entering, always cautious not to startle him. It was her way of relearning how to be his mother, not just to the boy she remembered, but to the man who came home, changed. They didn't talk much about the lost years at first. That kind of pain required silence, too. But slowly, little moments of vulnerability emerged. One night, while watching the rain, Noah asked, "Do you think I died, in a way?" Back then, Emma looked at him, her heart aching. "No," she said. "You were lost, but you're still you, still Noah." He looked down at his hands, cracked and worn. "I don't know who that is yet." "That's okay," she said. "We'll find him together." Word of Noah's return continued to ripple across the world. Emma declined most interviews, but she did appear once, on a podcast dedicated to cold cases. Her voice was steady, but raw. "When you lose someone without answers," she said, "you grieve and hope at the same time. You live in limbo. But seeing him again, knowing he's breathing the same air, it changes everything." Listeners flooded the episode with messages of support. Families with missing loved ones wrote in, sharing their own stories, their own hopes. Some told her that Noah's story gave them reason to keep searching. Emma responded to every single message. She knew what it meant to feel alone. With the help of a nonprofit specializing in long-term missing persons recovery, she and Noah began creating a small outreach project, the ECHO Initiative, to support families dealing with ambiguous loss. They held monthly support calls, offered digital toolkits, and even funded DNA test kits for cold cases. Giving back became part of Noah's healing. Though fragile, he spoke at one event via live stream. His voice shook, but he smiled. "I was gone for a long time," he said, "but someone kept looking. Someone refused to forget me, and that made all the difference." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. But even as Noah rebuilt, questions lingered. There were no arrests, no confirmed perpetrators. The leads from his memories, boats, basements, foreign cities, were followed by law enforcement, but yielded no conclusive evidence. The case remained open, but inactive, and Emma struggled with that. "How can they not find who did this?" she asked one night, frustration heavy in her voice. Noah looked at her gently. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But I already got the part that matters. What's that? You! Life continued, tentatively, tenderly. Noah began taking walks alone. He joined a trauma support group. He got a library card and started reading again, slowly working his way through old science fiction novels. He even started therapy for memory integration, hoping to one day understand the full arc of what happened. Emma returned to work part-time, though her evenings were always spent with Noah. They shared quiet dinners, nostalgic movies, and long conversations about nothing. They found comfort in normalcy. Some nights they sat on the porch, watching the wind move through. "Do you think we'll ever get all the answers?" Emma asked once. Noah didn't hesitate. "Number. But I think we'll learn how to live without them." 6 months passed. The seasons turned, but time didn't move the same way for Noah. He described it like walking through fog, everything soft around the edge, sometimes glowing, sometimes suffocating. It was different now. He had anchors, he had Emma, he had home. By spring, he began therapy twice a week and agreed to start cognitive rehabilitation to work through gaps in memory and attention. It was exhausting, but it gave him a sense of purpose. One afternoon, Emma found him sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by a pile of newspapers and maps. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice warm. "I'm trying to figure out where I've been. My memories aren't much, but if I can match something, a name, a street, a symbol, I might remember more." It became a quiet obsession, not dangerous, just determined. Noah wasn't trying to solve his own case as much as understand his own life. He wanted to reclaim the time stolen from him. And then came something unexpected. A letter. No return address. Inside, a photo. A grainy image of a narrow alley somewhere in Romania. Scribbled on the back were 2 words, "You remember?" Emma's hands trembled as she held it. She showed it to Noah. His eyes widened. He looked at it for a long time, then nodded. "That's the alley behind the church, the one with the bells." It was real. Not a dream. Not imagined. Someone else remembered, too. It was the first clue in years that there was someone else out there connected to Noah's disappearance. Someone alive. Watching. The letter was handed over to the FBI. It was being examined for fingerprints, chemical residue, postmark tracking. But Emma already knew what it meant. His story wasn't over. The past wasn't done with him. But this time, they weren't alone. Despite the chilling letter, Noah chose not to retreat. Instead, he wrote. He filled notebook after notebook, memories, feelings, flashbacks, and one day, a line. "I don't want my silence to be louder than my voice anymore." That became the title of the article he agreed to co-author with a trauma expert from the nonprofit, his first public statement. The article went viral. Thousands of survivors messaged him. Some had been trafficked, some had been missing and later returned. Some were siblings, like Emma, still searching. His inbox overflowed. It was overwhelming, but also healing. Noah said, "Maybe I didn't survive just for myself. Maybe I survived for others, too." Emma watched with quiet pride. Her brother, so broken, so resilient, was becoming a beacon. By summer, Noah enrolled in an online art program. "I can't fix what happened," he told Dana one evening, "but maybe I can make something new with what's left." He spent hours drawing, sketches of faces he half remembered, cities he couldn't place, moments that blurred like fading dreams. Some were dark, others strangely peaceful. Emma framed one, a self-portrait in charcoal, split down the middle. On one side, a young man smiling. On the other, the same man, eyes empty, mouth closed. She hung it in the hallway. It was beautiful and devastating, just like him. As the first anniversary of Noah's return approached, the family held a small gathering in the backyard. Just close friends, a few neighbors, and those who'd helped search for him all those years ago. There were candles, soft music, and silence. Noah stood and spoke briefly. "I don't have all the words," he said, "but I know I'm lucky. Not everyone comes back, and if you have someone you love, don't let them vanish without a fight. Keep their name alive." He raised his glass, and they all did the same. To survival, to memory, to the ones still missing. The man who had once walked past a camera in a foreign land, barely recognizable, was now rebuilding a life. He might never remember everything. He might never know why, but he was here. And Emma never stopped saying it. You came back. Some stories end with answers, others end with closure. But this one, Noah's story, is different. It lives in the space between what was lost and what was found, between silence and sound, between the moment a boy vanished into the trees and the flicker of a TikTok video that pulled him back from the brink of being forgotten. 9 years, 9 years of darkness, of doubt, of aching absence, and then 12 seconds of footage. That's all it took to light the match again, to reignite the hope Emma had carried like a fragile candle for nearly a decade. A brother, thought gone forever, spotted by chance in the blurred background of someone else's life. A stranger to himself, a ghost on film, and yet undeniably real. What followed wasn't a happy ending wrapped in a bow. It was something quieter, harder, braver. It was healing, because healing is not a destination. It's a choice made over and over again, to face the past, to ask impossible questions, to breathe through the pain of not knowing everything and still choosing to move forward. Noah is still recovering. Emma is still searching for understanding, for justice, for peace, but they have each other now, and that makes all the difference. In a world saturated with noise, with scrolling, with moments we forget before the screen dims, this story stands still. It reminds us that behind every missing poster, behind every cold case headline, is a family still hoping, a sister still searching, a name still echoing through time. And maybe that's the question we all need to ask. What would you do if you saw someone you thought was gone? Would you look away? Or would you stop the scroll, zoom in, and start asking questions that others gave up on? Because sometimes the difference between disappearance and discovery is one person refusing to let go. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, your stories, your hopes. And if you've ever lost someone, know this: they are not forgotten. They are never just a face in a photo. They are never just a headline. They are someone's Noah, and someone out there is still looking, always.